Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Robert Seller Sports Podcast. This is the second edition of the college football offseason previews, which I guess is a new series that I'm doing, which is going to be fun. We did Alabama yesterday. Now we got LSU. LSU is going to be, in my opinion, one of the most captivating teams in all of college football this season in 2026 for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think they're going to be really good. And I feel like no one's really talking about that. Everything that people are talking about on LSU is all the Lane Kiffin stuff. Of course, he got hired, all that debacle last year. And then, of course, he hired like 20 new coaches to come coach for him, including Ed Orgeron. But I think the reason that this team is going to be so captivating, first and foremost, is because they're going to be really good. And also, ESPN is just going to be going crazy the entire year because Lane Kiffin is there. So if you don't think that you've been hearing enough LSU talk this offseason, you're going to hear so much talk about this team pretty much all year long. They might be the most talked about team in college football this upcoming season. And I guess that's why I'm doing them second. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start talking about the LSU Tigers. So if you look at last year where LSU was, it was quite the year for LSU. They started off pretty hot. Rankings wise, they were a top 3 team in the country after they went on the road and beat Clemson in week 1, and people were saying that they were the favorites to win the SEC. I remember hearing that. I never fully bought into LSU. If you watched my podcast last year, I never really did. But a lot of people out there thought LSU was the best team in the Southeastern Conference, and it quickly went downhill. Of course, they did still beat Florida, and then they lost to Ole Miss, and then they lost to whoever else they lost. They lost to Bama, they lost to Vandy, they lost to a lot of teams, and then it sort of culminated with that game at home against Texas A&M where they got smoked. That game was not even close, and because of that, Brian Kelly got fired, which the whole state of Louisiana seemed to be really happy about, and then they had all the offseason drama with hiring Lane Kiffin and all that. But I think it's good for LSU that all of that is in the rearview mirror. Brian Kelly is behind them. They've made all their new hires. Now they can actually focus on the football season. Which is what I care about, which is what I'm excited about. So if we look at their 2025 Rob Sell rating, which is, if you don't know what that is, that's totally fine. Basically, no one on this planet knows what that is other than me. But I came up with my own system to sort of rank teams in college football based on efficiency, offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, stuff like that. And if we look at LSU's rating last year, it was 59th overall in the country. And yeah, that's not where LSU wants to be. They want to be up there. They want to be in the top 20, the top 10, the top 5, even top 1. And 59 is a heck of a long way from there. LSU's offense was horrendous last year. They were 92nd in college football in terms of offensive efficiency per my numbers. They were last in the SEC in rushing yards per game. They had a worse rushing offense than Alabama. That's bad. If you have a worse rushing offense than Alabama in 2025, you are not looking good. Garrett Nussmeier was incredibly disappointing. The wide receiver core was incredibly inconsistent. And it just sort of resulted in a very, very poor year for LSU offensively. Defensively, though, they were pretty good. Their new defensive coordinator, I guess he's now in his 3rd year, but his 2nd year was last year, was Blake Baker. I love Blake Baker. I love LSU's defensive mindset, and I think it's great that LSU not only had a great defensive season last year, but is pretty much carrying over their entire defensive staff from last year and keeping it. I think that's a very, very big win that Lane Kiffin had this offseason, was retaining a lot of that defensive staff. And we see it in these numbers. I mean, they were 27th defensively per my numbers efficiency-wise, which is really good, especially considering the fact that their offense was so bad. Despite the fact they were on the field all the time, they still had a pretty good defense, which is impressive. They were 21st in the country in defensive red zone rate. The only area defensively that LSU struggled in last year was getting pressure. They were 10th in the SEC in sacks. They just didn't really have a lot of consistent pass rush on that team. But they did address that issue in a couple major ways that we're going to talk about in a second. But you see the little numbers that I have to the side. If you look to the right, and if you're just listening to this, that's fine. But if you look to your right and you see passing yards per game first, sacks allowed first, you're like, that doesn't seem like LSU's offense last year. That's because that's Ole Miss's offense. These are Ole Miss's offensive stats, and I even put them next to the LSU stats on the left as well. But LSU basically had a really bad offense last year and a really bad defense. Ole Miss had a really, really elite offense. In fact, they were the 2nd most efficient offense in the SEC behind Vanderbilt, which just speaks to Diego Pavia's greatness. But no one wants to talk about Diego Pavia's greatness. But that's not what we're going to talk about. That's neither here nor there. This is an LSU episode. But basically, LSU is combining a really, really elite defense with a really, really elite offense. And I think it's going to work magnificently. I am super bought into this LSU football team. And I think it's because they have the genius defensively of Blake Baker and his man coverage system. combined with Charlie Weiss Jr. and Lane Kiffin's high-flying offense, I think it's just going to work so beautifully together, and it's going to lead to one of the best teams, not only in the SEC, but potentially in the country, legitimately. I think LSU has a very, very strong chance to be one of the heavy favorites to win the national title this year. I am completely bought in on them, and let me show you why. Let's look at this coaching staff. Basically, the way that I did this, I color-coded it. I'm colorblind myself, but I still color-coded it. The purple means they're returning in terms of the coaching staff, and the red means that they're new. And I think coaching staff is just as important, if not more important, than the actual players on the field, because the players can only become their best selves if they are coached well by their position coaches and by their overall coordinators. So if you look at the offensive staff for the LSU Tigers, it is literally completely new. Of course, Lane Kiffin's the new head coach. He's going to be the main philosopher, organizer of the offense. He's not going to call plays because Charlie Weiss Jr. calls plays. A lot of people don't think that Charlie Weiss Jr. calls plays, but that man calls plays. So Lane Kiffin, of course, is going to have the philosophy of the offense. It's going to be his control. And almost every single positional coach on this LSU team is coming from Ole Miss. He brought over almost his entire offensive staff, which I think is incredible because Ole Miss's offense the last couple of years has been fantastic. I already talked about Charlie Weiss Jr. Do we remember when Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss for the playoffs and Ole Miss beat Georgia and nearly beat Miami? Yeah, that's because Charlie Weiss was still calling plays. That dude is as good of an offensive mind as anyone in this sport. The fact that LSU has Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr., I would be beyond shocked if the LSU offense is anything other than electric and phenomenal and consistent and efficient this year. It's going to be great, especially looking at this coaching staff. It's even the quarterback's coach, Dan Stevens. Do we not remember? Trinidad Chambliss came from Ferris State, which is a Division II school, and this coaching staff, Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss Jr., and Dan Stevens, took him from being a D2 quarterback to one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, and now he's like the Heisman frontrunner behind Arch Manning. So if that coaching staff can do that with Trinidad Chambliss, and Trinidad's great. I love Trinidad. I love Trinidad if you've listened to me before. But the fact that that coaching staff can do that with Trinidad, it just speaks wonders to how amazing offensive minds that these guys are. And it speaks wonders to how important it is that Lane Kiffin was able to not only bring himself, but also the entirety of the LSU or the Ole Miss offensive coaching staff with him to Baton Rouge. And then defensively, I already mentioned, Blake Baker's coming back. He's got Kevin Peoples, Corey Raymond, and Jake Olson coming back, which I think is phenomenal. LSU's secondary has been really, really good the last 2 years, especially last year, because they play a lot of man coverage. They get up in your face. They press you. They have big, big corners. DJ Pickett is 6'5". PJ Woodland is only 5'11", but he plays big. And they just get in your face all the time and play man coverage. It's really fun to watch, and it's really annoying as an offensive play caller when you have to deal with that. And they're retaining their two biggest defensive back coaches in Corey Raymond and Jake Olson. And then the one area that I mentioned LSU's defense struggled in last year was pass rush. Guess what? They got a new defensive end coach, Sterling Lucas, coming over from USC. That's South Carolina USC, not Southern California. I just couldn't fit South Carolina on the graphic. So I apologize. I'm not perfect around here. I'm doing my best, but I'm not perfect. And he coached the likes of Dylan Stewart. He coached Kennard. Was that his last name? Kyle Kennard, I think that's who it was. He's got a great reputation, Sterling Lucas does, with edge rushers, and he's got some absolute maniacs coming in out of the transfer portal. So, again, I think this LSU offense is going to be phenomenal because of the coaching staff and because of some guys I'm going to mention in a little bit. And I also think the defense is going to be just as good as it was last year, and it was phenomenal last year. So, I don't understand where in this LSU team the weakness is. I don't get why people don't think that LSU is going to be elite next year, because as far as I'm concerned, the offense and the defense are both looking phenomenal. Let's look at the personnel. Let's look at the players, what everyone really wants to look at. Starting off with the offense. LSU in the transfer portal, they landed a lot of big-time recruits, none bigger than quarterback Sam Levitt from Arizona State. If you don't know about Sam Levitt, I'm going to show him to you real quick because I've got some film to watch on this guy. So let me pause it real quick. The two things that you need to be good at if you want to be a quarterback in the Lane Kiffin system, first of all, is you have to be able to get the ball out quick because they run so many RPOs. They run so many just extensions of the run game where if the defense is running zone coverage, Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. will just pick them apart constantly because they know the trends of the defense. They know that if they'll pull a guard, that the linebacker will shift with them, and then there's a hole in that window. They know that if you're playing cover 3 off, they're going to have the 5-yard hitch route all the way on the outside. If you just go and watch Ole Miss last year, you will see constant, just free yards that Charlie Weiss Jr. and Lane Kiffin can draw up. So if you want to be a quarterback in that system, you have to be able to get the ball out quick and you have to have a really good release. And Sam Leavitt 100% has that. This is a game against Texas Tech, one of the best defenses in the country last year, with first-round draft pick David Bailey on their team and some others just studs. And this is Sam Leavitt showcasing that he just has a great release. This is an RPO that he's just going to throw the tight end, and look at just how effortless that is. That is perfect. I promise you that Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. turned on this tape and they saw that. The fact that he can just effortlessly flick it like that with just a great release, and they said, all right, this is our guy. I can completely see this guy throwing RPOs all year long and making a living off of it. So I think that's what that's what Sam Leavitt is going to do very, very good with the LSU Bayou Bengals. The next clip is going to be another one where he just has such a quick release. He doesn't even really need to set his feet. He's flicking almost like a second baseman does when he's turning a double play. If you watch it, it's just the ball is out so quick. He does ball tap a little bit, which I don't like. If you see right before he releases the ball, he does tap it with his left hand. See that little tap? See, that just wastes a little bit of time. If I was Lane Kiffin, I would coach that out of him. But that's the only thing that just keeps him from having one of the best releases in all of the sport of college football. I know it's picky, but you see when he does a little ball tap right there, you're wasting time. There's no need for the ball tap, Sam. There's no need. So Sam Leavitt can do that. That's the first thing that you need to do to be an elite quarterback in this system. And the other thing you need to do to truly take it to the next level and be like elite, which Trinidad Chambliss was so good at doing, is being able to improvise and make crazy plays on 3rd and long. Do we remember when Ole Miss played Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and Trinidad was running around making all those plays? Yeah, that was incredible. And Sam Leavitt can do that. And this is one play. This is one of the more underrated plays, I think, in all of the college football season last year against Texas Tech that Sam Leavitt made on 3rd and 8. Just watch this. I don't know if you've seen this already or not, but this play is crazy. He's getting pressured by David Bailey, steps up, avoids the pressure, rolling to his left, hucks it downfield, and it's a dime. Like I didn't see this until I was like, you know what? He played Texas Tech. Maybe I should go watch some Texas Tech film on this guy. This play is nuts. I don't understand how he makes this throw. He's rolling to his left, pressures right in his face. He gets absolutely decked on that throw and drops on a dime like 40-plus yards down the field. So Sam Leavitt can make the quick throws. He's got a great release, and he can make the highlight reel plays like that in 3rd and 8 when his team needs him the most. So I really like Sam Leavitt. I think he's a great pickup for LSU. He's still very inconsistent. He throws some interceptions. He makes some dumb mistakes. I get that. But at the end of the day, I think that Lane Kiffin will do his very best to iron that out. And with just think, Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. got Trinidad Chambliss to be one of the best quarterbacks in the entirety of college football. If he can do that with those guys, he can take Sam Leavitt and he can just make him into an absolute gem. I would be shocked if that's not the case. Looking at the rest of this offense, Harlem Berry is back at running back. I think also Caden Durham is coming back for LSU, so they're going to have some depth in that running back room. Honestly, the Lane Kiffin run game is really complicated. Basically, Ole Miss's run game last year was just, we'll just run inside zone and maybe Kawan Lacey will bounce one for 60 yards. And he did it pretty awesome. And Harlem Berry's great. Is he Kawan Lacey? Not from what I've seen, but he's still a pretty good running back. Maybe he can develop into that. We'll see what happens. I love the receivers that LSU has, though. At X receiver, they got Jace Brown. At Z receiver, Jackson Harris. And slot receiver, Winston Watkins. Those are 3 transfers. Winston Watkins is coming from Ole Miss. He was one of their slot receivers last year. He had 373 yards and a touchdown with Ole Miss. He's solid. He's a scrappy player. He's going to have, a pretty good season with Ole Miss or with LSU under this offense. Jace Brown is one of my favorite players on this team for sure. He's a transfer from Kansas State. He's got elite deep route running skills, in my opinion. Averaged 17.4 yards per catch with Kansas State. Had 712 yards receiving last year with Avery Johnson as his quarterback. And I like watching Avery Johnson just as much as the next guy, but putting up 712 yards with Avery Johnson as your quarterback is not the easiest thing to do, and Jace Brown did that. I'm going to show you guys a clip real quick of Jace Brown and what I mean when I say he's a great deep route runner. Iowa State, I don't know what defense they're running because Iowa State was all over the place in this game. This is the game in Ireland they played in week 1, but Jace Brown's in the slot right now. He's basically going to get matched up with the safety. Shout out Avery Johnson for a great pump fake here. But watch as Jace Brown just go. He's selling the dig and then just breaks it right out for a wide open touchdown. So I think that if I'm an LSU fan and I'm looking at Jace Brown, he's going to be the guy that provides a lot of the explosive plays for this team as he hits a little silly. Hey, I love Jace Brown, man. I'm a big fan of him. But the guy that I love more than Jace Brown on this team is Hawaii transfer Jackson Harris. If you don't know about Jackson Harris, you're in the same boat as I was about, like, I don't know, an hour and a half ago, because I didn't really know about him either. But then I turned on the tape, and Jackson Harris is an absolute stud. He's going to be playing Z wide receiver or maybe even X wide receiver, probably some X, I would imagine, for this LSU Tigers team. He's 6'3", transferred over from the Rainbow Warriors. I don't know what they were feeding him over there in Hawaii, but whatever it was, it helped him. I think he had like 937 yards receiving last year and a bunch of touchdowns for Hawaii. He was a menace all year long in the Mountain West. And basically, he does two things very, very well at the wide receiver position. First of all, you can throw back shoulder to this guy all day long, and since he's 6'3", he will do that. He will go up and he will make you pay for leaving him one-on-one in man coverage, which is what an LSU offense needs under Lane Kiffin, because it's very easy to run man coverage against Ole Miss and kind of box them. If you're Georgia, like Georgia did that last year in the fourth quarter of their regular season game, that's how they won. That's why I thought they were going to beat Ole Miss in the playoffs, because they were just going to run man coverage. But if you run zone coverage against Lane Kiffin, he's going to pick you apart with those free yardage plays. And if you run man coverage against them, and he has a guy like Jackson Harris that can just do this sort of thing one-on-one with corners, then I don't know how you're going to stop this Ole Miss offense, if I'm being completely honest. I love this dude. So not only can he do this, but also Jackson Harris had 5 plays last year where he had a touchdown of 68 yards or more. 5 of them. A lot of college football players go their whole career without having one. Jackson Harris had 5 in one season with Hawaii. So not only can he go up and dunk on you, but he also has breakaway speed and great route running down the field, as we see in this game against San Jose State. Just dusted that corner one-on-one. And when you can have an X receiver that can dust a corner one-on-one that demands a bracket from a safety at all times, it opens up the offense so much more for a successful run game and for those RPOs that Lane Kiffin just loves to call. This is the craziest play I saw him make. He's sitting over there at the 35-yard line right now and just casually one-hands the ball with his right hand. And look at the speed. Look at the breakaway speed from our boy Jackson Harris. Golly, I just love watching this guy. I am so excited to watch him in an LSU uniform this year. I think he's going to be fantastic. And he's going to be the player to watch for me on this LSU squad. An offense that I think is just going to be absolutely awesome. They also got Trey'Dez Green back, who's as good of a red zone threat as anybody in college football. The dude's 6'8". He had 7 touchdowns last year in just 8 games because he had an MCL issue somewhere in the season. I forget exactly where, but he's going to be a stud. They got Jordan Seaton, the number 1 tackle transfer out of Colorado, who is a stud. I swear that dude is going to be a future NFL star at left tackle. And a good thing for LSU is that, when you have a Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weis offense, the offensive line doesn't really matter that much, because most of the time you're getting the ball out really, really fast to where you don't even really need to have a great offensive line. And when they run, again, they run very simple run schemes where they're running like inside zone or duo, and they're just trusting the running back to find the hole and pop and, do something explosive. So the offensive line is good, but it doesn't even really need to be good. That's the beauty of the Lane Kiffin offense. My popcorn player, I've already talked about him a lot. If you don't know about the popcorn player, then yeah, that's everybody, because it's the first time I'm doing it. Basically, my popcorn player is the player that I would, most like to watch and eat popcorn at the same time because they're entertaining. And my popcorn player for LSU is Jackson Harris, because he's 6'3", he can dunk on people, and he's really fast. And I just showed you tape on why that is. So I love Jackson. I'm really excited to watch this guy. If you can't tell already, it's making me really happy. So shout out to him. Let's look at the defense now. We've already talked about the secondary guys that are coming back. DJ Pickett, Tamarcus Cooley, PJ Woodland, and Deshaun Spears are all guys that made a huge impact on LSU secondary last year. Part of the reason why that secondary unit was so good. The only guy that's really leaving is Mansour Delane, who had a really big impact. He was their best corner, granted, but DJ Pickett, I think, could be just as good as Delane was with that LSU team. And not to mention, Deshaun Spears is one of the best nickels in the SEC. He's coming back to LSU. And then they also got Ty Benningfield, the transfer from Boise State, who had 105 tackles last year. So, yeah, this defense, especially the secondary, is going to be great. And then in the front seven, of course, they return Whit Weeks. It's a very, very notable piece to that defense. He's been their center of their defense for the last couple of years. He's one of the best tacklers, one of the best linebackers in the SEC. He did only play 6 games last year because he had an ankle injury that was lingering. Hopefully they can get that fixed for next year. Hopefully he's not in and out of games. But even in just those 6 games, he had 50 tackles. So, I mean, he just plays his heart out every single game, and he's an absolute stud, and he'll anchor that defense again alongside TJ Daugherty. I really like TJ Daugherty. Had 98 tackles for Ole Miss last year, has a lot of experience playing in the SEC. I think that LSU's linebackers could be as good as anyone's linebackers in the country next year. Not to mention, guys I was talking about, the edge rushers that they acquired out of the portal. Jordan Ross from Tennessee, Princewell, forgive me, I'm just going to say Princewell. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. Princewell and Jordan Ross. Those are the 2 edge rushers they got. Both of them are big-time prospects, or at least Jordan Ross was a big-time recruit. And then Princewell was a 92-star recruit on 24/7 Sports, but he had 9 sacks last year. He's a stud. So LSU had a hard time getting to the quarterback last year. In my opinion, that's a lot of the reasons why they got shelled by A&M was because Marcel Reed could just do whatever he wanted in the backfield, and their special teams was a disaster. But LSU couldn't get to the quarterback consistently next year, so they go and they hire a new edge rusher coach from South Carolina, and they go get Princewell and Jordan Ross out of the portal. That just shows you that Lane Kiffin is a great head coach. He does a great job looking at what the problems are and then directly addressing them. So I do think this LSU defense is going to be fantastic. They're fantastic in the secondary. They were last year, and they returned most of what made that fantastic, both coaching-wise and personnel-wise. The linebackers are 2 of the most experienced and talented in the SEC with TJ Daugherty and Whit Weeks. And then the edge rushers in Princewell and Jordan Ross are both spectacular. And this defense, honestly, should be incredible alongside one of the best offenses in the country. So the last thing to look at with this LSU team is the schedule. And the schedule is fascinating. This is going to be one of the most intriguing teams in all of college football this year. They open up with Clemson at home. Clemson, in my opinion, is an offensive mess. They have so much overhaul over there. Their new offensive coordinator, Christopher Vizina, is going to be their quarterback. I don't really like Christopher Vizina. I think he's really inconsistent. He's got great physicals, but we'll see what happens with them. I would be shocked if LSU loses that game. Then they got Louisiana Tech, and then they got the big one on the road at Ole Miss. That's going to be interesting. But the bulk, like the big time portion of this schedule, they do have to play Ole Miss and A&M in back-to-back weeks, but then they get, I'm not going to say it's time off because, obviously they get McNeese. It's going to be easy. At Kentucky is going to be so tough. Kentucky, I really do think Kentucky's going to be really good this year. I'm excited to talk about them when I talk about them. But that game's going to be tough. And then they got Mississippi State at home and at Auburn. But after that bye week, they got a bye week Halloween weekend. November is going to be crazy for LSU. They host Bama, they host Texas, then they go at Tennessee. That stretch right there, regardless of if they're entering that stretch with 1 loss, with 0 losses, that's going to determine their season. Those back-to-back home games against Alabama and Texas are going to be ginormous. They're probably both going to be night games. They're just both going to be huge. And then how they respond after that on the road at Tennessee is also going to be big. This is a really tough schedule for LSU. Even though I think they might be the best team in the SEC, and I know that's crazy to say, but I do think LSU could potentially be the best team in the SEC. They got one of the toughest schedules, having to play A&M, at Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas, at Tennessee, at Auburn, at Kentucky. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough for the Bayou Bengals to go undefeated. But at the end of the day, I do think this is a playoff team. I think LSU is going to have one of, if not the best offenses in not only the SEC, but in college football this season, complemented with a great defense. Legitimately, LSU or Lane Kiffin has never had, as a head coach, as good of a defense as he is going to have this year with LSU. And I just think the personnel and the coaching staff, and it all just makes way too much sense. I'm thinking about taking LSU to go to the semifinals, maybe into the national championship. I think they're going to be that good. So my final prediction for them, I'll say, and this is just, I'm coming up with this in the moment, so this is not the most thought out thing ever, but I think they're going to beat Clemson, beat Louisiana Tech. I think they're going to smoke Ole Miss on the road. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe Ole Miss pulls that one out. I wouldn't be surprised if Trinidad just goes crazy. I think they'll beat A&M and McNeese and Kentucky and Mississippi State and Auburn. I'll say they beat Alabama. I'll say they beat Kentucky. They'll beat Texas, and then they'll lose to Tennessee on the road, and then beat Arkansas and go 11-1 and go to the SEC championship. That's my prediction for LSU. Again, I could be very wrong. A lot of times I am very wrong about these things, but I just think there's just too much good on this LSU team for them to not be successful. And I am just going to be a big Bayou Bengals fan this season because, my goodness, their team is looking fantastic, at least in my opinion, for the reasons that I've already stated. So that'll do it for my LSU preview. Thanks so much for watching. If you take one thing away from this video, please don't let it be that LSU is phenomenal, or that I really like Lane Kiffin, or I really like Charlie Weiss and this, that, or the other. Just let it be that Jesus Christ loves you. He's here for you always, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing or who you're with. And this is not me saying that I'm above you or above anybody else. I'm a sinner just as much as anybody else is. But when I live my life with Jesus, my life it's happy and it's fulfilled and it's perfect. But when I live my life without Jesus, when I try and do things myself, that's when it goes haywire. And that happens a lot more than I would like it to. So I just implore you, just pray for a second. Just take one moment out of your day to say hi to God because he loves you more than you could ever possibly imagine. And I promise, with all the craziness that's going on in our world right now, the one true thing that will always be there, that will always be the same, is Christ's love for you. He died on the cross for you, and he just desires nothing more than to get to know you. He just wants to be your friend. That's it. Just wants to be your friend. And unlike, LSU, he will not let you down sometime. LSU, they didn't let us down in 2019, but across from that, there's been some iffy. You can put your faith in LSU, or you can put your faith in Jesus, is what I'm trying to say. And putting your faith in Jesus, I promise, will always work out. So with that, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great week. It's World Cup week starting on, I think, Thursday. So go watch the World Cup. I can't wait. I haven't watched any soccer like the last 3 years, but I cannot wait to go crazy watching the World Cup. It's going to be a really fun time. And so, I've rambled on for too long. But with that, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great week. God bless.